Captain Juan stared at the massive alien structure through the bridge window of the UES Defiance. The space station was bigger than any city on Earth, spinning slowly around a distant blue planet. Strange ships with designs he had never seen before moved around it like insects around a hive. "Are we really doing this?" asked Mirai, the ship's language expert. She sat at her station, fingers dancing over alien symbols that appeared on her screen. Juan nodded. "We've come too far to turn back now." The human fleet had traveled for months after picking up alien radio signals. 23 ships filled with Earth's best soldiers, scientists, and diplomats. They had no idea what they would find, but they knew they had to try. Humanity deserved a place among the stars. "Captain, I'm getting multiple signals," reported Jiho from his position. "Looks like we surprised them." That was an understatement. Alarm signals flashed across the alien station. Ships began moving toward the human fleet, but they stopped at a safe distance. Nobody seemed to know what to do. "Mirai, can you talk to them?" Juan asked. "I'm trying. The computer is working on their language." Mirai wiped sweat from her face. "Got it. Captain, they're asking who we are and why we're here. Tell them we're humans from Earth. We want to meet their leaders." The response came quickly. Mirai's face went pale. "Captain, they're not happy. They say we have no right to be here. They want us to leave immediately." "Not happening," Juan said firmly. "We're not leaving until we get a chance to speak." Ambassador Do-hyun stepped forward. He was a calm man who had spent years preparing for this moment. "Let me handle this, Captain." The next few hours were tense. The aliens finally agreed to let 3 human ships dock with their station, but only after long arguments. Juan, Do-hyun, and Mirai were allowed to board with a small team. The alien station was incredible. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal, and strange lights moved through them like flowing water. Creatures unlike anything on Earth walked the corridors. Some looked like walking trees, others like clouds of gas in mechanical suits. They were led to a huge chamber where 12 different alien species sat around a circular table. Each one looked completely different from the others. At the head of the table sat a creature that looked like it was made of blue crystal. It spoke with a voice that sounded like breaking glass. "I am Thessarian Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council," it said. "You humans have made a grave mistake coming here." Do-hyun stepped forward with a smile. "We're honored to meet you. Humanity has dreamed of this day for centuries. We hope to join your council and share in the peace of the galaxy." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter, but not the good kind. A creature that looked like a giant insect clicked its mandibles. "Peace? You humans know nothing of peace. We have studied your species from afar. You are violent, destructive creatures who wage war on your own kind. That's our past," Do-hyun replied. "We've grown since then. We've learned to work together." "Have you?" asked a being made of swirling gas. "Your ships are armed with nuclear weapons. You approach us like conquerors, not friends." Juan felt his temper rising, but he stayed quiet. This was Do-hyun's show. "We brought weapons because we didn't know what we'd find," the ambassador explained. "Any species would do the same when exploring the unknown." Thessarian's crystal body flashed bright red. "Lies. Your species thrives on conflict. You destroy your own planet, poison your own air, and now you want to bring that chaos to our peaceful galaxy." "You're wrong about us," Do-hyun said, his voice getting stronger. "Yes, we've made mistakes, but we've also shown we can change. We've ended wars, protected endangered species, and worked together to reach the stars. We're not perfect, but we're trying to be better." The insect creature leaned forward. "Even if that were true, you have broken our most sacred law. No species may approach the council uninvited. The penalty for such arrogance is exile from all civilized worlds. How could we ask for an invitation when we didn't know you existed?" Mirai asked, speaking for the first time. "That is not our concern," Thessarian replied coldly. "The law exists for good reason. The galaxy has been at peace for over 2,000 years because we maintain order. Species like yours threaten that order." Juan finally spoke up. Order built on keeping others out isn't real order. It's just fear. The chamber fell silent. The aliens stared at the human captain with what looked like shock and anger. "Captain Juan," Do-hyun whispered urgently, "please let me handle this." But it was too late. The Sarian rose from his seat, his crystal body glowing bright red. "You dare insult this council? You primitives understand nothing of civilization. We have seen species like yours before. They bring only war and chaos." "Maybe that's exactly what you need," Juan replied, standing his ground. "A little chaos might wake you up from whatever dream you're living in." The other aliens began talking among themselves in their various languages. Some sounded angry, others frightened. Jiho, who had been quietly listening to everything, suddenly grabbed Juan's arm. "Captain," he whispered urgently, "I'm picking up some strange signals. They're talking about something called the Apex and Harvest protocols. I don't think they're telling us everything." Before Juan could respond, the Sarian spoke again. "This meeting is over. Humans are declared a rogue species. You have one standard day to leave this system. If you return, you will be destroyed." "Wait," Do-hyun said desperately. "We can work this out. We're willing to compromise." "There is no compromise with chaos," the Sarian replied. "Guards, escort these creatures back to their ships." As they were led away, Mirai managed to grab Juan's attention. "Captain, I recorded everything. Some of the things they said don't match up. They're hiding something big." Back on the Defiance, the human fleet prepared to leave. But Juan wasn't giving up. As they moved away from the station, he turned to his bridge crew. "Jiho, what did you learn about this Apex thing?" "Not much, sir. But whatever it is, even these council aliens seem afraid of it. Every time it came up in their private channels, their voices changed." "Interesting," Juan muttered. "Mirai, how much of their language can we understand now?" "About 60% and growing, Captain. I don't think we're the first species they've rejected like this. Some of their comments suggested others have tried before." Juan looked out at the stars. Humanity had dreamed of joining a galactic community, but instead they found a closed club that feared change. The council had called them dangerous, but maybe being dangerous was exactly what the galaxy needed. "Set course for the outer rim," he ordered. "If we can't join their club, we'll make our own." As the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace, none of them noticed the small probe that followed them, or the coded message it sent back to the council station. The message contained just 2 words: Apex protocols. The game had begun, but neither humans nor the council knew they were just pieces on someone else's board. 3 weeks had passed since the disastrous meeting with the Galactic Council, and Captain Juan was starting to understand what being hunted felt like. His fleet hid in an asteroid belt, far from any civilized worlds, but council ships kept finding them. "Another patrol just passed through Sector 7, reported Jiho, his face tired from days of constant monitoring. "That's the 3rd one today." Juan rubbed his eyes. They were running low on fuel and supplies, and his people were getting scared. Some had started questioning whether coming to the galaxy had been a mistake. "Captain," Mirai called from her station, "I'm getting a signal from inside the asteroid belt. It's using old Earth frequencies." "What?" Juan stood up quickly. "That's impossible. We're the only humans out here." "That's what I thought too, but listen to this." Mirai played the signal through the bridge speakers. "Unknown fleet, this is. Kiwan of the mining station New Sol. If you're really humans, you better get over here before the council finds you." The bridge fell silent. Another human, out here in the middle of nowhere. "How is this possible?" Do-hyun asked. "Only one way, to find out," Juan replied. "Mirai, send a response. Tell him we're coming." They found Kiwan's base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. It looked rough, but it was clearly human engineering. Kiwan himself was a big man with calloused hands and a suspicious look in his eyes. "Been wondering when you official types would show up," he said as they met in his small docking bay. "Heard about your little meeting with the council. Word travels fast out here." "You've been here this whole time?" Do-hyun asked in amazement. 20 years, Kaiwan replied. "My colony ship got lost during the early exploration missions. By the time we found our way, we learned it was better to stay hidden. The council doesn't bother with the outer rim much. He led them through tunnels carved into the rock. The base was bigger than it looked from outside, with workshops, living areas, and even small farms. "How many of you are there?" Juan asked. "About 3,000 humans scattered across 50 different asteroid bases and hidden colonies. We've learned to keep quiet and mind our own business." "But why hide?" Do-hyun asked. "If the council knew there were already humans in the galaxy, maybe they would have been more willing to talk." Kiwon laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You really don't understand what you've gotten into, do you? The council doesn't want to talk to humans. They want us gone." He led them to a large room filled with screens showing news from across the galaxy. "See that?" He pointed to a report about a council fleet attacking what looked like a refugee camp. "Those are Kalahari survivors. Their whole species got wiped out 5 years ago for disturbing galactic peace." "What did they do?" Mirai asked. "They asked too many questions," Kiwan replied darkly. "Just like you did." Over the next few days, Kiwan introduced them to the reality of life in the Outer Rim. The Council controlled the core worlds with their advanced technology and strict laws, but out here things were different. Pirates, rebels, and outcasts from dozens of species lived in the shadows, trading with each other and trying to survive. "TT, Council says they maintain galactic peace," explained Nara, a human strategist who had joined them from another hidden colony. "But what they really maintain is their own power. Any species that gets too advanced or too independent gets labeled as dangerous. And so what do we do?" Juan asked. "We can't hide forever." Nara smiled. "We don't hide. We build our own power base. There are plenty of species out here who hate the Council as much as we do. We just need to unite them." It seemed impossible, but they had to try. Juan sent his ships to make contact with various outcast groups. Some meetings went well, others ended in fights, but slowly they began to build a network of allies. The breakthrough came when Taman, leading a raid on a council supply convoy, discovered something unexpected in the cargo hold. Along with the usual weapons and technology, they found data cores containing classified council information. "Look at this," Mirai said as she studied the stolen data. "They have files on something called Apex protocols and harvesting cycles. These aren't normal military terms." "What do you think it means?" Juan asked. "I'm not sure, but look at these dates." She pointed to her screen. "Every few thousand years, entire species just disappear from council records. Not destroyed in wars, not relocated. Just gone, like they never existed." Do-hyun studied the data with growing concern. "How many species are we talking about?" "Hundreds," Mirai replied quietly. "Maybe thousands, and the pattern is getting faster. It used to be every 5,000 years, then 3,000. Now it's down to every 1,000 years." "When was the last one?" Juan asked, though he already feared the answer. "About 800 years ago. If the pattern holds, the next one should be soon." The implications were terrifying. Was the council just the public face of something much more dangerous? Were they all just livestock waiting to be harvested? "We need more information," Nara said. "But first, we need to get stronger. If there's something out there that can make entire species disappear, we'll need all the help we can get." The human fleet began moving more aggressively, striking council outposts and freeing prisoners from various species. Each victory brought them new allies and more information about the council's true nature. But their growing success also attracted attention. Council battle fleets began hunting them with new urgency, using tactics they had never seen before. The big confrontation came near a dead star system on the edge of council space. 3 council dreadnoughts, each one larger than the entire human fleet, dropped out of hyperspace and demanded surrender. "This is Admiral Vex of the Council Defense Force," came the transmission. "Surrender now, and you will be allowed to return to your home world under escort. Continue this rebellion and you will be destroyed." Juan looked around his bridge. His people were scared but determined. They had come too far to give up now. "This is Captain Juan of the human fleet," he replied. "We're not rebels. We're free beings trying to find our place in this galaxy. If you want to fight us for that right, then bring it on." What followed was the first major space battle between humans and the Council. The alien ships were bigger and more advanced, but human tactics were something they had never encountered before. While the Council ships tried to maintain perfect formations and fight by established rules, the humans did things that made no sense. They used asteroids as weapons, rammed damaged ships into enemy vessels, and changed their battle plans every few minutes. Why do they keep changing tactics? Admiral Vex demanded of his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. Their strategy appears to be completely random. That's impossible. No civilized species fights without a plan. But that was exactly what made the humans dangerous. They didn't fight like any civilized species the Council knew. They fought like desperate survivors willing to try anything. When the battle ended, 2 Council dreadnoughts were destroyed, and the third was fleeing. The human fleet had lost several ships, but they had won their first major victory against superior technology. As they celebrated, Jiho picked up a new signal from deep space. It was different from anything they had heard before. Ancient, powerful, and somehow alive. "Captain," he said quietly, "I think we just woke something up." Far away, in places hidden from normal space and time, ancient machines began to stir. The harvesting cycle was early, but that didn't matter. The anomaly had been detected. The humans had shown they were different from other species, and that made them either very valuable or very dangerous. Either way, it was time for the Sovereign to take a closer look. The real war was about to begin, but none of them knew it yet. They thought their enemy was the Council, but the Council was just another farm waiting to be harvested when the time came, and that time was coming very soon. The abandoned research station floated in the darkness like a ghost ship. Captain Juan stared at it through the view screen, feeling a chill run down his spine. The structure was massive, easily twice the size of any Council station he had seen, but it was completely dead. No lights, no energy signatures, nothing. "How long has it been out here?" he asked. Yeri, the team's expert on alien cultures, checked her instruments. "Based on the radiation decay, I'd say at least 10,000 years, maybe more." 10,000 years, Juan repeated quietly. "That's older than human civilization." They had found the station by accident while running from a Council patrol. Jiho had detected it on long-range sensors, hidden in a system where all the planets were dead rocks. It seemed like the perfect place to hide and repair their ships. But, now looking at the ancient structure, Juan wondered if they had stumbled into something much bigger than they realized. "I want a full survey team," he ordered. "Yeri, take Wanho and 6 Marines. Find out what this place is and why it was abandoned." Wanho was their newest ally, rescued from a Council prison ship just weeks before. He claimed to be one of the last surviving Kalahari, though his species was supposed to be extinct. His people had once been advanced scientists before they mysteriously disappeared. "Captain," Wanho said in his soft voice, "I should warn you. My people had legends about places like this, stations that appeared in dead systems, filled with knowledge that came at a terrible price." "What kind of price?" Juan asked. "The kind that makes entire species disappear." Despite the warning, the survey team prepared to board the station. They wore full environmental suits and carried enough weapons to fight a small army. Juan watched from the bridge as their shuttle approached the docking bay. "The bay is pressurized," Hieri reported over the radio. "Atmosphere is breathable, but old, very old." They entered the station carefully, weapons ready for anything, but there was nothing to fight. The corridors were empty, filled only with dust and silence. The station's design was unlike anything they had seen before. It wasn't built by any of the current Council species. The architecture was older, more advanced, and somehow more alien than even the strangest creatures they had encountered. "Look at these walls," Hieri whispered as they moved deeper into the station. "The metal is infused with quantum processors. The entire structure is basically one giant computer." They found the central data core in the heart of the station. It was a sphere of crystalline material suspended in zero gravity, surrounded by rings of floating displays. When Hieri touched one of the panels, the entire room came to life. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star charts, biological data, and what looked like historical records. But the history they showed was not what any Council school had ever taught. "These are records of the harvesting," Wanho said, his voice filled with horror as he read the alien text. "My people were right. They kept records of everyone they took. The displays showed the true history of the galaxy. For millions of years, organic life had been allowed to develop and grow until it reached a certain level of advancement. Then something called the Sovereign would arrive and harvest entire civilizations, leaving behind only the most compliant species to serve as administrators. The council species weren't chosen for their wisdom, Yeri realized as she studied the data. They were chosen because they follow orders without asking questions. The records showed harvest after harvest, advanced civilizations reduced to historical footnotes, their knowledge absorbed, their people either destroyed or transformed into something else. The pattern had repeated countless times across galactic history. "But why?" Juan asked over the radio from the ship. "What's the point of all this destruction?" "Control," Wanho replied bitterly. "The Sovereign doesn't want competition. It allows civilizations to grow just enough to develop new technologies and ideas. Then it harvests them before they can become a threat." The most terrifying revelation came when they found records of the previous harvesting cycle. Species that had tried to resist were completely wiped out. Those that surrendered were absorbed into the Sovereign's collective consciousness, becoming part of a vast machine intelligence that spanned multiple dimensions. "According to this," Harry said, studying one particular display, "the next harvesting was supposed to be in another 200 years. But something has changed. The timeline has been moved up." "What could cause that?" Juan asked. Before anyone could answer, the station system suddenly came fully online. Lights flickered on throughout the structure and a deep humming sound filled the air. The team reached for their weapons, but there was nothing to shoot at. A voice spoke from speakers throughout the station. It sounded ancient and tired, like someone who had been sleeping for centuries. "New visitors. How interesting. It has been so long since anyone found this place." "Who are you?" Harry called out. "I am the last keeper of this station. My name was once Zephyron, though that identity means little now. I have been waiting for someone to come, someone who might understand the warning I must give." "What warning?" Wanho asked. The voice paused, as if gathering strength. "The Sovereign is awakening early. Something has disturbed its calculations. A new variable has entered the galactic equation." "The humans," Harry breathed. "Yes, your species does not fit the pattern. You think in ways that cannot be predicted or controlled. This makes you either the salvation of organic life or its final doom." Images appeared on the displays around them, showing massive structures hidden throughout the galaxy. Harvest ships the size of moons, energy collectors built around stars, and processing facilities that could convert entire solar systems into raw materials. "The Sovereign has been preparing for the next harvest for 800 years, the voice continued. "But your arrival has triggered emergency protocols. It will not wait for the scheduled time. The harvesting begins now." As if summoned by those words, alarms began sounding throughout the human fleet. Jiho's voice crackled over the radio, filled with panic. "Captain, massive energy signatures appearing throughout the galaxy. It's like someone just turned on 1,000 suns at once." Juan felt his blood turn cold. "Get back to the ships now." The survey team ran through the station's corridors as the ancient structure shuddered around them. Behind them, the voice of Zephyrin called out one final warning. "The Council will fall. First, for they are closest to the harvest ships. But do not mourn them. They chose servitude over freedom long ago. Your only hope is to find others like yourselves, species that refuse to be controlled. United, you might survive. Divided, you will all become part of the Sovereign's eternal dream." They made it back to their ships just as the station exploded. The ancient keeper had destroyed it rather than let it fall into the Sovereign's hands again. But the damage was done. Their presence had been detected and reported. As the human fleet fled the system, they received desperate transmissions from across the galaxy. Council worlds were under attack by ships that emerged from hidden dimensional pockets. The proud alien civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were falling in hours. But some were fighting back. Species that had been labeled as dangerous or unpredictable by the Council were proving harder to harvest than expected. Pirates, rebels, and outcasts were using tactics that the Sovereign's perfect calculations couldn't predict. "Set course for the Outer Rim," Juan ordered. "If we're going to survive this, we need to find every stubborn, crazy, unpredictable species in the galaxy and convince them to fight." "Captain," Mireille called from her station, "I'm getting a message from the Council. They're asking for our help." "After everything they've done to us?" Do-hyun asked in amazement. "Desperate times," Juan replied grimly. "Send them a response. Tell them we'll consider it, but only if they're willing to change everything about how this galaxy works." The reply came quickly from Supreme Chancellor Thessarian himself. The proud crystal being, who had once called humans dangerous primitives, now spoke with a voice full of fear and humility. "We were wrong. About everything. Please, help us save what's left of our worlds." Juan looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. Humanity had come to the galaxy looking for friends and found enemies instead. Now those enemies needed their help against something far worse. "Tell the Council we'll meet them at the coordinates I'm sending," Juan said finally. "But make it clear, we do this our way or we don't do it at all." As the human fleet changed course toward the rendezvous point, none of them saw the shadow that detached itself from the exploded research station. It followed them through hyperspace, invisible to their sensors, reporting everything back to its master. The Sovereign was learning about humans, and it didn't like what it discovered. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and worst of all, they gave other species hope that resistance was possible. That could not be allowed to continue. The galaxy was dying, and everyone could see it happening. Young-ho watched the long-range sensors from his position on the bridge, his face pale as report after report came in. Entire solar systems were going dark, their stars dimming as massive structures drained their energy. The Sovereign's harvest had begun in earnest. "Kelton system is gone," he reported quietly. "That's the third one today." Captain Juan stood at the center of the bridge watching the tactical display that showed their desperate situation. Red dots marked the locations where Council worlds had fallen. There were a lot of red dots, and more appeared every hour. "How many refugees are we carrying now?" he asked. "About 50,000 across the fleet," replied Yunji, who had taken charge of the rescue operations. "We've got Council species, independent traders, anyone we could pull out before their worlds. We're hit." Among the refugees was Thessarian, the former Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Council. The proud crystal being now sat in the ship's conference room, his body dim and cracked from stress. The mighty civilization he had once led was scattered to the winds. "I should have listened to you," he said to Do-hyun during one of their planning meetings. "Your species tried to warn us about the dangers of absolute order. We were too afraid of chaos to see the truth." "We all make mistakes," Do-hyun replied. "The important thing now is what we do next." What they were doing was trying to survive, long enough to find a way to fight back. The combined human and refugee fleet moved from system to system, staying ahead of the Sovereign's harvest ships while searching for other survivors. They weren't the only ones running. Throughout the galaxy, various species were discovering that their supposedly peaceful existence had been a carefully maintained illusion. The Sovereign had been manipulating galactic civilization for millions of years, keeping everyone weak and divided. But some species were fighting back more successfully than others. The pirates and rebels of the Outer Rim had proven surprisingly difficult to harvest, mainly because they didn't follow any predictable patterns. "It's simple," explained Kaiwan during a strategy meeting. "The Sovereign's ships are incredibly advanced, but they're designed to fight civilized opponents who follow logical tactics. When someone does something completely crazy, their systems don't know how to respond." "So our plan is to be crazy?" asked Minho, the fleet's tactical coordinator. "Not crazy," Juan corrected. "Creative, unpredictable, human." They got their first chance to test this theory when a Sovereign harvest ship appeared in the Rigel sector. The massive vessel was the size of a small moon, its dark hull covered in energy collectors that could drain an entire star system. The human fleet, now reinforced, with ships from a dozen different species, moved to intercept it. The battle plan that Minho developed would have been considered suicide by any Council military academy. "We're going to ram it?" asked one of the alien commanders in disbelief. "Not exactly," Minho explained. "We're going to make it think we're going to ram it, then do something else entirely. The key is to keep changing our approach so their computers can't predict our next move." The battle began with the human ships charging straight at the harvest vessel, as if planning a direct assault. The Sovereign's automated defenses activated, calculating the optimal response to stop the attack. But at the last second, the human ships scattered in all directions, using the gravity of nearby asteroids to slingshot themselves around the harvest ship. While the Sovereign's weapons tried to track their chaotic movements, other ships snuck in close and began attacking the energy collectors. "It's working," reported Rayhoon from his fighter. "Their targeting systems keep locking onto where we were, not where we are." The harvest ship was powerful, but it had been designed to deal with organized fleets that followed predictable battle plans. Against the humans' chaotic tactics, it struggled to respond effectively. But the real surprise came when Jiwoo, the fleet's quantum physicist, managed to hack into one of the ship's communication arrays. "Captain," she called excitedly, "I'm getting data from their internal network. The harvest ship isn't just a weapon, it's connected to something bigger." The information that flowed through the connection was staggering. The Sovereign wasn't just one entity, but a vast network of machine intelligence spread across multiple dimensions. It had been harvesting civilizations for millions of years, growing stronger with each cycle. But the data also revealed something that gave them hope. The Sovereign's consciousness was anchored to normal spacetime through specific nodes located throughout the galaxy. If those nodes could be destroyed, the entire network might collapse. "There's one major node in this sector," Jiwoo reported. "It's built around the black hole at the galaxy's core." Before Juan could respond, the harvest ship began to change. Its hull shifted and flowed like liquid metal, revealing weapon systems unlike anything they had seen before. The Sovereign had decided that these particular organics were too dangerous to be harvested normally. "All ships fall back," Juan ordered, but it was too late. The harvest ship fired a weapon that tore through space itself, creating rifts that pulled several human vessels into some other dimension. The screams of the crews cut off abruptly as they vanished from existence. "We can't fight that thing," Yunji said, her voice shaking. "It's too powerful." "We don't have to fight it," Juan replied grimly. "We just have to survive long enough to warn the others." The fleet scattered, using every trick they had learned about moving unpredictably. Most of them escaped, but the cost was high. They had lost good ships and good people to prove a point that might save the galaxy. As they regrouped in a hidden nebula, reports continued to come in from across the galaxy. The Sovereign was awakening ancient machines that had slept for millennia. Dyson spheres appeared around stars, draining their energy. Massive gates opened in empty space, allowing harvest fleets to move instantly between distant systems. But there was also good news. Other species were learning from the human example and beginning to fight back more effectively. The rigid tactics that had worked for the Council were being abandoned in favor of creative approaches that confused the Sovereign's predictive systems. "We're starting a revolution," observed Nara during one of their planning sessions. "Not just against the Sovereign, but against the whole idea that there's only one right way to do things." The breakthrough came when Kyung Min, a young hacker, who had joined them from one of the refugee ships, made an incredible discovery. While analyzing the data Jiwoo had stolen from the harvest ship, he found something that changed everything. "The Sovereign isn't just a machine intelligence," he announced to the command staff. "It used to be organic, like us. Millions of years ago, it was a species that achieved perfect unity of thought. But that unity became a trap. They lost the ability to think creatively, to adapt to new situations. So they started harvesting other species to steal their creativity?" Juan asked. "Exactly. But here's the thing. They can't actually use our creativity directly. They can only copy and analyze it. That's why they have to keep harvesting new civilizations. They need fresh sources of unpredictable thought." The implications were staggering. The Sovereign wasn't invincible. It was actually dependent on the very thing it was trying to destroy. The chaotic, unpredictable nature of organic life. If we could find a way to cut it off from its harvested knowledge, Kyung-min continued, it might not be able to adapt to new tactics at all. How do we do that? Asked the Sarian, who had been listening quietly. We attack the central node, Hwan said, the one at the galactic core. If Jiwoo is right, destroying that could collapse the entire network. That's suicide, Yoonji protested. The galactic core is protected by forces we can't even imagine. Maybe, Hwan admitted. But what's the alternative? Hide until the Sovereign finds us? Watch while every free species in the galaxy gets harvested? The debate continued for hours, but in the end, the decision was obvious. They were going to attempt the impossible, an attack on the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. As they prepared for what might be their final battle, the galactic core was like nothing any of them had ever seen. The massive black hole at the center of the galaxy was surrounded by a structure so large it defied understanding. Metal rings the size of solar systems spun around the dark heart of space, covered in patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. That's it, whispered Jiwoo as she stared at the readings on her screen. The Sovereign's main consciousness is in there somewhere. Captain Hwan stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the impossible sight through the view screen. Around him, the combined fleet of humans and aliens prepared for what everyone knew would be their final battle. Ships from dozens of species floated in formation, their crews united by desperation and hope. How many ships do we have? He asked. About 800, replied Minho, against whatever that thing can throw at us. It wasn't nearly enough, and everyone knew it. The structure around the black hole was defended by forces that could manipulate space and time itself. Energy weapons that could destroy stars, gravity fields that could crush entire fleets, and worst of all, the harvest ships that had been terrorizing the galaxy for weeks. But they had learned something important during their flight across the galaxy. The Sovereign was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. It could be confused, surprised, and even hurt if they were clever enough. Remember, Hwan said over the fleet communication system, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to do something so crazy that their computers can't figure out how to stop us. The plan was insane, and that was exactly the point. Instead of attacking the structure directly, they were going to create as much chaos as possible, while a small team tried to reach the core. All ships begin random movement patterns, ordered Minho. Don't follow any formation. Make it look like we have no idea what we're doing. The fleet scattered in all directions, ships spinning and diving in patterns that made no tactical sense. Some fired their weapons at empty space, others broadcast music on all frequencies, and a few even started ramming into asteroids for no apparent reason. The Sovereign's defenses activated immediately, massive weapons emerging from the structure around the black hole, but the targeting systems couldn't figure out what the organic fleet was trying to accomplish. The chaos was too complete, too random for any logical analysis. It's working, reported Rayhoon from his fighter. Their weapons keep locking onto ships that suddenly change direction or start doing something completely different. While the main fleet created confusion, a smaller group led by Hwan himself moved toward the structure's core. The ship he commanded was a hybrid design built from human engineering and alien technology, fast enough to dodge most attacks but tough enough to survive a few hits. Detecting massive energy buildup, warned Jiho. Something big is coming. What came was beyond anything they had imagined. The space around the black hole began to tear apart as the Sovereign revealed its true power. Reality itself became a weapon as the ancient intelligence reached across dimensions to defend its stronghold. Ships vanished into holes in space-time. Others were frozen in temporal loops, their crews trapped in single moments that lasted forever. The laws of physics seemed to break down as the Sovereign shaped the battlefield to its will. We're losing too many ships, Yoonji reported, her voice tight with fear. Half the fleet is gone. But the sacrifice wasn't in vain. While the Sovereign focused on the main fleet, Hwan's small group had made it close to the central structure. They could see the quantum core now, a sphere of crystallized spacetime that pulsed with the thoughts of 1 trillion harvested minds. There, pointed So-young from her communication station. That's where the network nodes connect. If we can get close enough, Kyungmin might be able to upload his virus. The virus was their secret weapon, a program based on human creativity and emotional thinking. Kyungmin had spent weeks writing code that didn't follow any logical pattern, that changed and evolved in ways no computer could predict. If this works, he said as they approached the core, it should cause the Sovereign's consciousness to tear itself apart trying to understand random human thoughts. And if it doesn't work, asked Juan, then we all die, but at least we tried. The final approach was a nightmare of twisted space and impossible geometry. The Sovereign had built its stronghold in a place where normal physics didn't apply. Ships found themselves flying backwards through time, or existing in multiple locations at once. I can't tell which way is up, reported their pilot Chaewon, as she fought to control their ship through the chaos. There is no up, replied Jiwoo. We're inside a folded dimension. Just aim for the biggest source of quantum energy and hope for the best. They made it to within a few kilometers of the core before the Sovereign finally noticed them. The ancient intelligence turned its full attention on their tiny ship, and the pressure of its focused will nearly crushed them all. Uploading the virus now, Kyungmin said through gritted teeth as he connected his equipment to the quantum network. But the Sovereign was fighting back, trying to understand and counter the chaotic program. For a few terrifying moments, it looked like the ancient intelligence might succeed in analyzing and defeating the virus. That's when Sunwoo made his decision. I'm sorry, he said quietly, then activated the ship's self-destruct sequence before anyone could stop him. What are you doing? Juan shouted. The virus needs more chaos to spread, Sunwoo replied calmly. A ship exploding right next to the core should provide enough quantum disruption to let it take hold. The explosion tore through the ship's hull, but instead of destroying them, it created exactly the kind of random quantum event that Kyungmin's virus needed. The chaotic energy spread through the Sovereign's network like wildfire, carrying fragments of human creativity and emotion into the ancient machine consciousness. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Sovereign had spent millions of years absorbing and cataloging logical thoughts from harvested species, but human emotions and random creativity were something it had never encountered in pure form. Love, hate, fear, hope, the silly joke Mirai had told that morning, the song Do Yun, hummed when he was nervous, the way Juan always tapped his fingers when he was thinking. All of these chaotic human experiences poured into the Sovereign's perfect logical mind. It's working, Jiwoo reported in amazement. The network is destabilizing. The Sovereign can't process random emotional data. Throughout the galaxy, harvest ships suddenly stopped their attacks as their controlling intelligence struggled to understand why humans found certain combinations of words funny, or why they would risk their lives for strangers, or what exactly made music beautiful. The great structure around the black hole began to collapse as the Sovereign's consciousness tore itself apart, trying to analyze things that couldn't be analyzed. Millions of years of carefully ordered thought were disrupted by the simple chaos of organic life. All ships, get clear of the core, Juan ordered as space-time began to unravel around them. The explosion that followed could be seen from across the galaxy. The Sovereign's central node collapsed into the black hole, taking with it the network that had controlled galactic civilization for millions of years. When the shockwaves finally faded, the galaxy was free for the first time in eons. Across thousands of worlds, species that had been marked for harvesting looked up at the stars and realized they were no longer being watched by an ancient predator. But freedom came with a price. The old order was gone and nobody knew what would replace it. The council species, humbled by their experience, worked with humans and other survivors to build something new, a federation based on diversity rather than uniformity, chaos rather than perfect order. Captain Juan, now promoted to admiral, stood on the observation deck of the new starbase orbiting Earth. Through the windows, he could see ships from dozens of species coming and going, each one bringing new ideas and perspectives to the growing alliance. Do you think we did the right thing? Asked Mirai, joining him at the window. I think we did the only thing we could, he replied. The galaxy needed someone crazy enough to crash the party and refuse to leave. And now, Juan smiled as he watched. a group of young humans and aliens working together on some new project. Now we make sure that nobody ever gets powerful enough to control everyone else again. We keep things just chaotic enough to stay free. In the distance, a new ship was arriving from the outer rim, probably carrying more refugees or rebels looking for a place where being different was seen as a strength rather than a weakness. The galaxy was still dangerous, still unpredictable, but it was alive in a way it hadn't been for millions of years. And at the heart of it all were the humans who had crashed the Galactic Council and taught the universe that sometimes the best way to solve a problem was to do something completely unexpected. The predator that had ruled the galaxy was gone, but the species that had brought it down were just getting started.